This is Gordon and Hannah Smith. We're here with Jack Gilbert, Ida Gilbert, Smith Schaefer. It is November the 6th, 2022, and we're just here to talk to Ida, my mom, and just ask her questions, pick her brain, do some math tests, work on work on some physics. We're going to do everything. All right, so first question, tell me where you were born and your brothers and sisters.
I was born April the 7th, 1933. Now, don't ask me how old that makes me. I have two older brothers. They're neither one living. Mel and Bill, and then me. And my brother Herb is, 2 years younger than me, I think. And then I have three sisters. Arlene, no. Viola, Carrie, and Arlene.
You're the oldest girl.
I'm the oldest girl,
But
so I got yelled at the most. And my oldest brother, Mel, and I were constant bickering because he bossed me and I bossed him, and we neither one would win.
how much older was he?
Maybe 2, maybe 3 years older. But
So where were you born?
I was born, the town is Bend, Oregon, but it wasn't really in a town. Mom and Dad were living in a cabin on the river out of town, and I didn't see a doctor until after I was a year old. My dad delivered me at home, and evidently I was healthy, and they decided to keep me, so when a doctor came through town about a year later, they took me in and had me checked out. Doctor said I'd make it, so that was it.
Were all your brothers and sisters born at home?
No. Well, my youngest sister was born here in Streeter in I don't know when, 29, 39? At my grandma's house on 11th Street. We were all sent out to the country to stay with aunts and uncles, and I don't think most of us were even aware my mother was expecting. And then when they brought us home, here's Mom in bed with this new baby, and it was my sister Arlene, and she's the baby of the family. And
Your dad was Arlington Schaefer. Your mom,
Arlington Carl,
Arlington Carl Schaefer.
and it's a C-A-R-L.
Okay. Your mom was Goldie?
Goldie, Ray, Carter, Fitz, Schaefer. And then she married Grandpa Rand.
Do you know how they met?
She was a hired girl working at a farm, and Grandpa had helped deliver a group of cattle to the farm, and then they came in for supper or something, and Mom was the girl that served the food and cleaned up the dishes and stuff, and evidently it clicked because they got married a few months later.
In Michigan or?
No, that was in Illinois.
In Illinois. Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay. So what's kind of the earliest thing you remember?
Earliest thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. You should have asked me that 10 years ago. As what? A lifestyle or a child or?
Event or?
Earliest childhood memory.
Yeah.
Well, I remember living in a house on Newport Avenue in Bend, Oregon. And the folks owned that house. It was up a hill. And then down the hill was a another house on the main street where they rented that out. And we were allowed to play up and down the driveway because cars didn't drive up that one. But we could not go down to that house. And that was my earliest playground area.
You lived in town, Bend,
It was on the outskirts.
and then you moved to a farm? A farmette?
Pardon?
You moved to a farm at some point? Or you had cattle and chickens and...
That wasn't until I got married, I don't think. I don't remember any of that until we got married and lived on the farm.
Okay.
I moved around a lot. My folks sent me back here to Illinois when I was a freshman in high school. And I attended Streeter High School in my freshman year. And then I stayed in Streeter for a year, and I met a lot of people, family.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where did you stay?
my Grandma Schaefer,
In town.
Grandma Ida Schaefer. Her name was Ida Wilhelmina Johanna Erkfitz Schaefer. How's that for a name? And the Erkfitz came from Germany. There are families still over there, I understand. I never met any of them. They are related to who in Streeter?
Wow.
Oh, I can't remember their names. Well, it's not important, I guess. We don't have contact with them.
Do you remember when your dad, when the Widowmaker came down and...
Yeah, he worked for a logging company, and he would leave our place on a Sunday afternoon. Somebody would pick him up, and he would be gone all week, and he wouldn't come back home until generally late Saturday. So he'd be home for Saturday night, and then he'd leave Sundays, just long enough for Mom to do his laundry. And he did that for about a year and a half. And while he was on that job one time, he was a logger, a widowmaker they call it. He was cutting down a tree, and one of the limbs fell off and hit him in the middle of the back and broke his back. And he was always rather handicapped after that.
In your sister Kari's letter, she said that your mom also left to be with Grandpa at the hospital in, I think, Bend
In
or
Portland. He was up in Portland. And so we stayed home. We stayed at our own house, but a very close family friend of my folks, her name was Kentner, Kentner. They lived out of town, and she came and stayed with us, cooked for us, and helped us with the laundry and stuff. And she had a daughter about my age that came, and she was kind of a stinker.
So, but you were the oldest girl at home, so did you take on the mom role?
I got stuck with a lot of that, yeah. Helping with the laundry, and we didn't have a washing machine. You washed on the board, rinsed, wrung them out by hand, and hung them on the line. No dryer. And you hung them careful so you didn't have to iron. If you didn't hang them very carefully, you had to iron. And the iron was the kind you heated up on the stove, and you click the handle on, and it was a heavy old iron. It would take the wrinkles out easy.
Is that where you learned to cook then, or who taught you to cook?
I don't know. I really don't know. My grandma never let me cook. When I stayed with her that year in Streeter, I don't know who taught me. I think maybe some of it just came from, I grew up and had to do it.
Having to do it.
Yeah.
Carrie also said you had to move to a shack for a while. Like a 2-room? You were in a 2-room?
Oh, yeah.
shack for a while.
It was a lineman's shack. They used to build little shacks along ditches and electric lines, and people would walk those lines, and then they could stay in those shacks or those cabins overnight and what have you. And so we lived in this lineman shack. It was a kitchen, dining room, living room all in one, and one bedroom. And so you learned to sleep on the floor or wherever you could find a place to bunk in. And my brothers slept out on the porch, and they were lucky. They had a bed that had a mattress and springs on it. And sometimes they'd holler. I remember a skunk got up on the porch one time, and the boys were quietly knocking on the windows, pointing at the skunk down on the floor, trying to get up on their bed. And we went out and threw things and scared it away. But it had to be an interesting way to live. But it was okay.
At that time, there was a military base or military training going on nearby. What do you remember about that?
Across the highway from us, the highway was about a block from us. We had a driveway that led from our house out to the highway, and the Army was camped in a bivouac camp right across the highway. And there probably was, 50 vehicles there, and I don't know how many military guys. And they were lonesome and bored, and they would come over and talk and sit on the outdoor areas and share their stories and so forth. And it was an interesting time.
Was this World War II era? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so because you talked about rationing.
Yes.
That
everything was rationed. And they would bring things that they had an abundance of over to share, and Mom would cook something and bake it and send it back to them. But sugar and things like that were rationed very tightly for us, and they would bring theirs over because they had more access to it. And so we lived a pretty lucky life.
Okay. Tell me about school. Then for you, school.
First grade, we were back in Illinois. We stayed here for a year when my sister was born, my youngest sister, Arlene. Mm-hmm. And I went to first grade here at Greeley School, I think it was. And it was a 3-room little schoolhouse. And I could walk to school. And then I'm trying to think. Because I had to wait for the bus one time, and the bus got lost and didn't realize they didn't pick us up, and I froze my feet. It was wintertime, and both of my feet froze. And I've paid that price ever since then. They're very sensitive, and sometimes I can't stand the feel of anything on my feet.
First grade?
So
that was first grade?
First grade, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Then you moved west. Is that right?
Yeah, and then Dad quit his job here, and he went out west again. And trying to think what grade I was in when we were in Montana, or if I was even in school. Because he stayed in Montana for a year on the Indian reservation. We lived in a teepee on the Indian reservation. And Mom had made canvas, it was almost like a sandwich bag that they'd slide the blankets in, and we 3 girls could sleep in the one canvas bag, sleeping bag, and the boys would have the other one, and Mom and Dad would have the third one. And then during the day, they'd make the bed up, and then they'd roll the pillows and the top part of the bag down, and that was our chair. You'd sit on the ground in the tent or on the teepee, on the little bit that was left unrolled, and you could lean back against that big heavy roll. That was our chair, our furniture. And we had a fire in the center, a fireplace or fire pot in the center of the teepee. And there's an interesting story about my brother. He got bored and he was going to show us how smart he was, so he was jumping across the fire. And he tried to show us how far he could get back and run and jump and go across the fire. And he misjudged and he landed right in the middle of that hot, well, it wasn't really burning, it was hot coals. And it got stuck in his shoe and sock. And you never saw a kid take his shoe and sock off so quick. He burned his foot pretty bad. He couldn't wear shoes and socks or shoe and sock for quite a while.
Which brother?
That was my brother, Bill.
Bill. Mm-hmm. Now that sounds fun in July, but you were in the teepee in the winter too, in Montana?
Mm-hmm.
How did that work?
Well, Dad would put a extra canvas on the inside of the teepee. He'd run it from pole to pole to pole, so it was like an extra little wall. So if the teepee sweated it at all, it ran down between those two layers of canvas. And we got spanked or slapped our hands if we touched the canvas, because if you touched it, of course, it made it more susceptible to soaking the rain in. And then later, Dad got our waterproofing that he could paint on it, and it was kind of a dirty brown color. And he painted it up pretty as high as he could. So the teepee was pretty waterproof. And then we had 3 roll-up beds, just be like a camping bunk roll or whatever you call it. That would sit, and we could sit on that during the day. It would be unrolled just enough you could sit without sitting on the ground or on the bottom of the floor of the tent. Of course, the floor of the tent was dirt.
What about food? During that time, what did you do for food?
We ate an awful lot of cornmeal mush, which I learned to hate. Dad hunted, and he'd catch fish and bring some birds home. And they used to get food from the food bank somewhere. I'm sure it was called something else. Oh. Thank you.
So, I mean, I pictured deer and rabbit. And,
yeah, we had a lot of deer, rabbit, and if somebody was lucky, there'd be fish. Once in a while, Dad would go out across the highway, and the ranchers would drive flocks of sheep or cattle across on that. It was a big, wide stretch of like prairie, and sometimes something would get lost, a sheep or cow or something, and so we did have some meat that way. And the rest of the time, Dad would hunt, bring deer home or fish. We didn't go hungry.
So that was 6, 7, 8 of you in the teepee then at that time, right? Because you had Arlene was born, right?
Yeah.
So you had everybody.
Yeah, that was after we came back from. Well, let me see. We're in the teepee for almost a year because we were isolated because somebody got chicken pox and smallpox and something else, measles. So we had to be isolated there. And then when that isolation time was almost up, they decided to take the trip back to Illinois. And so we slept in the teepee at night. Dad would set it up, or we'd sleep along the road. Dad would unroll our bedrolls by the car, and we'd sleep outside so we weren't contaminating people. And then by the time we got back to Illinois, we were, he thought we were free of germs. And they had 3 bedrolls, one for Mom and Dad, one for my 3 brothers, and one for the 4 girls. Well, the 3 girls, because My little sister slept with Mom and Dad.
We did a few vacations where you and Dad would take us, and we would sleep on the side of the road on Route 66 or wherever. We'd pull off to the side of the road and put a lean-to against the car. So,
Do you remember, were you with us that time that the teenagers spotted us and they came by to harass us?
I might have been very small.
They drove by and they'd yell at us, and we were all trying to sleep in our cots on our beds along the car there, and they'd turn around, come back, and holler again, and then they would stop and throw things at us. And Dad finally got up and took his pistol out and he shot it in the air. They didn't come back again.
Whoops, these guys are armed.
Yeah, so other than that, I don't remember too much. Oh, he went to sleep one time driving, and we went off the road and down into a ditch, and that woke him up when the car hit the bottom of the ditch, and he came back up around the road, and away we went again.
You're talking about Grandpa, right? I don't remember my dad falling asleep.
Your grandpa.
Yeah, Grandpa Schaefer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he had never driven a car
Oh.
in his young years, and they bought this car, 29 Hudson, so they could take this driving trip back to Illinois. And I can't fathom that nowadays. Never having driven, and he'd go out and practice at night with his brother-in-law would take him out, and he taught him how to drive the car. And so Dad never had really had driving experience other than the driving practice. So I marvel that we got to and from in one piece.
So,
There was one time, though, he went to sleep, dozed off, and the car went down in the ditch, and it woke him up because we were rattling all everywhere, and he got back up on the road, and Mom made him pull over and stop and doze off then for a while.
so you were in Montana for roughly a year and then straight to Oregon, then from Montana? So you'd be like
Yes.
third grade, you were in Oregon at that point? In Bend?
First grade in Illinois, and I got to skip second grade, I think. Yeah, I got to skip a grade because they said I would be wasting my time. So I went from first grade to third grade.
And third grade would be in Bend, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So does that sound boring enough?
No, that's good. So you were in Bend then pretty much up to high school? I mean, kind of, you were in the shack for a little bit, but...
No, we moved to Days Creek. Dad got hurt in the logging accident. He would be up near Portland working in the timber. He'd go up on a Sunday afternoon and he wouldn't come back until late Saturday night. He stayed up there during the week and worked. That's how he supported us for almost a year. And then a tree limb fell on his back and crushed it, and that ended his logging career. And he was in the hospital in Portland, Oregon for, a long time. And then they sent him home, and he, of course, was semi-invalid from then on for a long, long time. It was hard for him to walk. He always had a walking stick. And he had a lot of pain. I'm sure they could have given him more help nowadays, but it was pretty painful for him. That ended his working career, though.
So, again, go back to Carrie. She said that eventually he settled with the insurance company for $1,500
Yeah,
and was able to buy a farm.
something like that.
With that, was that at Days Creek then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they were able to buy the ranch at Days Creek. And Days Creek was off. You had to cross the river. It was the only way to get to that road. And it was a gravel road for about 2 miles. And then up the hill, it was just a mountain as far as you could see. And we went up there, drive up there, and there was a house tucked up there in a little flat area. And it was a nice little house, a kitchen, dining room combined, all in one, and a living room, and one bedroom. And that was where we spent most of our high school years in, too.
Yeah, so how far away from school were you then?
It would be about, about 3 miles if you walked the road, but you could row the boat. We had a canoe, and then you could row the canoe across the river, and then it would only be about maybe a half a block, and we could catch the bus. If you were over there in time, you could catch the school bus and drive to school. And same with coming home at night, you could do that. They'd leave the boat over on that side of the river. And
do you remember what the name was?
Huh?
You remember what the name of the school was?
I'm sorry.
The name of the school?
Days Creek
High school or
Community School. It was grade school and some high school. Yeah, it was high school.
So, at your time at Days Creek, what hobbies did you have? What things did you do when you weren't working or doing schoolwork?
Well, we worked in the fruit orchards in the spring and summer and fall. You had to trim the branches, some of the branches, so the fruit trees would bear fruit. You'd harvest the fruit in the summer and fall, and that was basically it. Well, Mom would always have a big garden. It would be as big as most people's double yards, because she was canning food for a lot of people.
I know the feeling. You had a big garden.
Yeah, you know that. And there was a barn up to about equivalent of a block from the house, and they kept the milk cows up there, and we had a couple sheep that got lost when the sheep herders went through. The folks got those, and they kept them until it was time to harvest the sheep for meat. And there was a chicken house. Mom always had chickens, Rhode Island Reds. They roamed loose most of the time, but then there was, when the coyotes were bad, they'd have to put them in the chicken house at night.
At high school, were you able to do, was there after school activities? Was there choir? Was there things at school?
No, my grandma didn't allow me to do much other than church. I could do the young people's activities, because Herb Brickard, my cousin, was able to drive me or take me, or he was kind of semi-involved in a lot of that, and he'd take me. He was my favorite cousin. And he took me, made sure I got to youth groups and stuff like that.
So that was back here?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
On 11th Street. You might want to drive by there and check it out.
When did you come back then to Illinois from Days Creek? Was it just during the school year, or did you come for years at a time?
For when?
So you left. You went to high school at Streeter.
Yeah.
1 year.
Just 1 year.
Just 1 year.
Just 1 year. Okay.
But I got to skip a year too.
Wow.
They tested me in the beginning to see where I qualified, and I got to skip a grade. I'm bragging now.
What was family life like around the table, around the dinner table? Was it
At home?
Mm-hmm. What was it like?
Well, if Dad was in a bad mood, you shut up. You didn't talk. If he had a headache or if he was worrying about something, you didn't bother him. Mom was always the buffer for everything. She was chief cook and bottle washer. She might need us to dry the dishes if they wouldn't drain. But the water was heated in a wash boiler on the stove, and we'd wash the dishes at the table and dry them, leave them sit on the table for till time to clear everything away, and then we'd put them away in the cupboard. And the cupboard was a corner cabinet with no doors on it, just a curtain crossed. And it had what 4 shelves on it, so it was stacked pretty high with dishes. And there was a water bucket table, and we were rich. We had a hydrant outside of the house. You could turn the hydrant on or turn the faucet on and get water that was pumped from I don't know where. And we could carry the water in a bucket, and it sat on that table just inside the door. And if you wanted a drink, there was a drinking ladle there. Everybody drank out of it. So I get sick every time I think of it now. And especially some of them. One guy came and he used to chew tobacco like mad, and he came and took a big slurp out. And I remember Mom walked over and took the ladle and washed it. And the stove was a wood stove, a wood-burning stove. Everything was cooked on the stove or in the oven or outside. And
now you're quite musical, and Grandpa was musical. Were all your siblings, were they musical as well?
Yeah, that was our entertainment. We couldn't go anywhere. Nobody would take us. And so our entertainment was, we had an old reed organ, a pump organ, that came across the desert with Mom when she was just a kid and came over. And it stayed in our house. That's what I learned how to play musical instruments on, and we'd have music concerts because we couldn't go anywhere. I played the organ, and my brothers learned how to rattle sticks together to keep time, and drums. They had made a drum. Dad stretched some buckskin leather over some kind of a ring, and it got painted up real pretty, and that was their drum. And that was our entertainment. We never went to shows or went to eat out or anything.
What about the old Hudson?
Oh, yeah. Dad needed a car to drive to work. And so his brother-in-law, my uncle, took him to, I don't know where they went, Portland? Was out of town somewhere anyway. And they bought the 29 Hudson, which was like a freight car almost. It was pretty, no scratches on it or anything. It was deep green with yellow striped trims around the windows and stuff. 3 seats, front, a center seat that would fold up, and a back seat, full seat. And then you could open the trunk up and there'd be a seat back there too. So that was our vehicle, our wheels for a lot of my early memory.
I heard the Army supplied you one set of wheels for the tires for that car.
Yeah, they brought some tires over. And my brother used to sneak across the highway, go to the Army camp, and they'd give him leftover stuff to bring home, and food and supplies and stuff, things they didn't use, toilet paper and things like that. And so we had a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm.
What else? They decided, we all had scarlet fever. And when I was and my brother were the last ones to have it, so we were almost out of isolation. And Dad decided to take off from his job. He was going to get laid off anyway. And they loaded everything up in that Hudson. Can you imagine loading a car for that many people to travel back to Illinois? You didn't open the door to step out on the running board because there was stuff packed hard there, and the trunk, of course, was full. And Mom packed all the food stuff we needed. It was in an orange crate box in the trunk. And what else? They had a water bag that they used to tie on the front radiator that would stay cool when the car was going. And so we could generally have some cool water to drink. And I guess that was the extent of it.
When you finally came back to Streeter, and your year of high school is Streeter High School, tell me how you met Dad. How you met George. How did that go?
Oh, I was sent back to stay with my grandma because she was alone, and they were worried about her being alone. And so they sent me back to live with Grandma, and I could go to Streeter schools. And Grandma went to the EUB church, and so I went to the EUB church, and they had a real active youth group, and they were having something after church, and the youth group invited me to go along, so I went, and that's when I met Dad.
Now there's a Streeter EUB church, and Dad went to the Ransom EUB church, right? Okay.
But the Ransom teen group had come into Streeter, and the teen groups were getting together, and that's when I met him. And then later, I went to the roller rink with Herb Brickert, Streeter roller rink, and turned out that your dad loved to skate, and so he was there. Their teen group was having a skating party too, and he asked me to skate, and I told him I didn't know how, and he didn't believe me, and I proved it. I took him down with me when I went down on the floor. And I guess that was the extent of it. Then we kind of developed a friendship. And then I had to go back to Oregon again.
Mm-hmm.
And we corresponded, and once a week he'd go down to the gas station, or he would call, and I had to go down to the gas station at Days Creek, which would be about 2 miles away. And he'd call on the gas station phone, and we could talk. And we kept that going for, 6 months or so. And then he said, "I'm coming out west." And he did, and I liked it.
How long after that do you think then you got married? Then, so you was calling back and forth like 6 months, and then were you married? You think like
yeah, he came out when the crops were harvested and all put away. That would be in the late fall. Then he made a trip out. And that's when we kind of sealed the idea that, hey, maybe we could make a go of it if we tried getting married. And so he said, okay, I'll send for you. So he had to go back with his youth group. And then I can't remember how it worked out, but I got sent back to stay with my grandma. And that year then worked out great. I went back in the fall, and then in May of that year we got married.
Okay, when you got married and you moved upstairs at the farmhouse in Ransom with Ralph and Sadie.
Yes.
How was that?
Not very nice, because our bedroom was right above their bedroom, and the bed springs squeak. You didn't hear that from me. So we had to make sure that we were very careful, or you didn't go in the bed. That's a little bit more information than what you need. But we had no privacy.
No. I want to back up a little bit. How did Dad propose to you? Was it on the phone? Was it when he was there in Oregon with you?
No, he was back here in Illinois, and I was out in Oregon. And I think I think he called me and I was talking on the telephone at the gas station because he used to call me at that phone. And he said, I'm coming out and would you consider getting married and we could go back to Illinois together? And I think it was that same year he came out when the harvest was over and he drove out and the attachment was still there. Attraction was still there.
But
So
what
we
about
got-
his Ford?
What?
What about his Ford that got wrecked?
Yeah, he crashed. He
Yeah.
hit boulders and ripped the bottom out of his brand new car.
Brand new car, yeah. So,
What about when you froze your feet?
Huh?
What about when you froze your feet?
Mm-hmm. She's first grade. We got it. That
Got it.
was a good story. Did
and they're still sensitive to this day.
so did Dad come back alone and then you came out like on a train or something? How did you get back to Illinois before the wedding? How did that
I
work?
came back with Dad. He came back because somebody was sick in the family. One of his brothers or sisters, I can't remember what. And Grandma was going to be alone. So Dad came back and I stayed at Viola Brickert's. And Herb was my chauffeur. He would haul livestock to the livestock yard in Chicago after working on the farm all day, and my job was to keep him awake, going and coming. And there were different times when he'd doze off, and I'd be dozing too. And we had a couple down in the ditchers and back up again. Nothing really happened though, but he was a neat cousin. I don't know if I would have made it if it hadn't been for him.
Now I've seen the video of your wedding or parts of the wedding. It looked like a beautiful wedding.
It was a pretty
It looked-
wedding.
Looked big, like it was like all of Ransom turned out. It seemed like.
Well, it was in the church,
Mhm.
and Ransom was Ransom. Everybody knew everybody, and they were half of them were related to him. And I was scared to death. And we got married, and went out to leave, and then somebody had decorated our car on the back all over, and then they hung strings of cans and stuff on the back of the car, so when you take off, you know you rattle. Well, we drove down about half a block and George stopped, and we disconnected those and we snuck back and we tied those on the preacher's car.
That's all. Sounds like Dad.
And we took off then. And other than that, there aren't a whole lot of memories there. Is that boring enough?
What about the deer?
Huh?
What about the deer?
What deer?
The deer.
Hitting a car with a deer, or
I'm sorry, honey.
The deer that followed you one time in the woods was being chased by wolves.
Oh, yeah. When I wasn't married then, though. I used to go for walks in the back acreage,
Mhm.
just to get away from everybody and everything. And probably 3 times a week I'd go, and it would be like walking from here to the city park maybe, and then back. And I was walking home. I was going home, and something kept poking me on the hip, and all at once, then the coyotes were. I heard the coyotes kind of yelping and howling, and they came running by. Well, of course, that scared me to death, so I took my jacket and was waving it and shouting like mad. And then I happened to look back, and here's this deer. It was a young deer, had been following me, and poking his nose into my coat, trying to get away from those coyotes. And so, of course, I helped him down to the farm, and he followed me. And I took my belt off and tied it around his neck and leashed him down to the farm. And Dad said, "No, you got to turn him loose. You can't keep him." And so we kept it and fed it and watered it good. And then The next day, Dad said, no, you got to turn it loose. And so I took it up on the back acreage and turned it loose then. And he ran a little bit, stopped, and came back. And I scared him off, and he ran a little bit, came back, and stopped. We did it about 3 times. And finally, I had to throw something at him and hit him with it. And then I didn't get to see him anymore. So I imagine the coyotes got him at some time or other. Does that sound boring enough?
Sure.
Honeymoon? Honeymoon? How was your honeymoon? Did you have a honeymoon?
Yeah. Where did we go? Wisconsin Dells.
That's nice.
But it was just for a short time because we got married in May the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And that's farming time. That's when the fields, you're starting to plant corn and stuff, so we couldn't take off very long. So we took a 3-day honeymoon. And we went up to Wisconsin real quick, stayed overnight, and came back just to get away. And
Was it a big change being a farmer's wife now, living on a farm with crops like that? Was that a big change for you, or?
oh, yeah, because my dad never planted much. What they planted was garden stuff. They'd have a huge garden, and Mom would can and can and can. I can remember the kitchen table being full of fruit jars, full of canned fruit for several days, waiting to make sure they all stayed sealed. And then they had a little cellar built onto the house. It was like a little extra room. It wasn't in the ground. It was an extra room with a concrete sidewalk floor and shelves and shelves and shelves. Mom had put all that canned goods out there. And that was our store for the year. And came out of that door and looked out, and there was a what do I want to call it? There was a water faucet with a pump, start the water, and then you could turn a faucet handle and the water would keep running. And there was a trough that ran down, and that was our water supply. You'd fill buckets of water up and bring them in the house. And we were lucky to have the water that close.
In the farm with Ralph and Sadie, how many years did you live there before you got you had the whole house then? Was George a baby? Was Jerry a baby?
I think Jerry was the baby then, and Ralph and Sadie moved into town then.
That had to be nice.
Yeah, you had to be quiet because we were upstairs, and some of the floorboards squeaked, and we tried to keep rugs over those boards, and you didn't have much privacy. We did have a back entrance, so George built a back doorway. He sacrificed a part of one of the rooms, which later became the nursery, and then we had this part of the room to make an entryway, and it was like a big porch roof with this angle, and you open this little room he built. You'd go out there, open the door, and there's that porch roof. It was railed in. He had made sure there was a rail fencer, so if you slipped and fell, you wouldn't fall off. And then a big flight of stairs, and turned. There was a flight of stairs with a turn in them, so we could go up and down. But that was our entrance, and from then on.
We were never allowed to go out there, but sometimes we did.
You were not supposed to be out there because someone was going to throw things off or jump off or slip and fall off. And there was a lot of concrete around there to hurt yourself on.
Mm-hmm. So George was the first baby. That Streeter Hospital then? All the kids were born in the hospital?
Yeah. No, somebody wasn't. Somebody was born in the car.
I didn't know that.
I think it was you.
What?
I think you were the one that was born in the car. We didn't make it in time. We were in the back parking lot of the hospital, and I told George. I said, "Oh, too late now. You can't. I can't get out now." And so they delivered the baby. He delivered the baby right in the car. Then what a mess. Well, he threw a blanket down to try and pick up the worst of it before. That's something you don't need to know, though. And then they came out from the emergency room of the hospital in a wheelchair and took us into the hospital. I stayed the required length of time, which was about 3 days.
Mm-hmm. And then came Jerry.
Yeah.
So,
But I had a set of twins that never matured. I never carried them full time. We could have had twins.
do you remember if that was before me or after me?
I think it was before you. I'm pretty, yeah, it was. It was. And I carried him about, I don't know, 3-4 months. I was starting to feel him kick a little bit. And it didn't happen. And so that's the extent of my excitement.
So, tell me about some of the vacation memories, because you and Dad took us on some great vacations. But what's some of the vacation memories
What do you remember?
taking us boys? I remember we were. Was it near Rapid City? We got into a beehive. It was a beehive in the campground, I remember.
Oh, yeah. It was a big box, and somebody moved the lid, and there was a bunch of bees in there, and guess who got out? And
Tippecanoe River, we're going there with the Zerlindens.
yeah, and there was a bend in there, and there were 2 little Indian kids. Bilo and, what was his name, Alex? Yeah, Bilo and Alex. The boys played with them. That was their playmates. And they were old enough their folks let them ride a canoe or a log or something down the river. It was just a small creek type river. And
that infamous trip to Oregon where Dad and
the
Bob,
fire.
Yeah, both built trailers that never made it home.
And the interesting thing, do you remember what Barbara had connection with?
No.
Jeff was the baby then, I think.
Yes.
And she was carrying him down to the camper to put him down for a nap. And the camper was on fire. And she came running up to yell, "Fire, fire, fire, the camper's on fire." And had it been 20 minutes later, we would have been missing a boy.
I think Jeff and I were both headed down for naps.
Well, yeah.
I think we were both part of it.
And the fire department came out after most of it was out. My sister came rushing out with a garden hose, and we didn't find out until later. My brother-in-law was standing back in the backyard, not too far from the hose, and he was not very helpful at fighting the fire. And we found out later he had all kinds of dynamite blasting caps stored on a shelf right behind where he was standing, and he didn't know what he was going to do with them if the fire spread that direction.
Oh no.
So we were lucky in a lot of ways, you know. Somebody could have been in the camper asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody could have gotten blown up. And we didn't have a camper to drive home. Does that sound boring enough? Huh?
You'd probably still be out there.
Somebody be there with a
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have very good cemeteries out there either.
Well,
I never could find my mom's grave out there. She's buried out in a pasture-like area with trees and stuff all around, and I never could find it when we were out there.
How did how well were you accepted into the whole Smith clan when you got married? Was that okay? Was there issues with the aunts and uncles and Ralph and his sisters, dad's sisters?
Well, I had to prove myself to them. Aunt Marie was the easiest to get along with. She accepted me right away. Anna Mae was a stranger because she lived in Michigan. And Iva Dell was the perfectionist, and I could never live up to what she expected. But trying to think of something.
All right, so were there times when we were boys that there times when you were really, like seriously worried for one of us? Were there any of those that come to mind?
Seriously worried what?
Worried, medical or accident or anything like that. Was there any time when you were seriously worried that comes to mind? You were worried about one of your boys? I remember Gary ate toadstools one time and got rushed to the emergency room.
Oh, well, yeah, you make them throw up and that's it. No. Can't think.
Did anybody get really sick?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Nobody got really
Basically,
sick,
for as much monkey business as you guys could get into, I'm amazed that there weren't more tragedies. Like when I went down to the barn and you guys showed me how you and Jeff used to jump across that ledge there from one side to the other in the barn upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I about died when I heard that.
Remember Gary put a nail through his foot there in the barn?
Oh, well, you
Because we ran
expect
around
things like that
barefoot all the
out
time.
in the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another time when the fence, something came after somebody. Huh. There was an animal came after one of you guys. We just barely got you over the barnyard fence in time. I can't remember what it was, though.
I don't remember that.
The horse used to bite her.
Huh?
The horse used to bite your feet.
Yeah, we had a Shetland when I was a teenager that none of us could ride, but Ray Little. No, not Ray Little. Yeah, Ray, wasn't it? One of your foster kids. So that brings around. You took in a lot of foster kids.
Not an awful lot. We had Ray Little.
There's Jimmy.
Jimmy, of course. We had the longest time. He was a very unloved little boy. And, I met him later. Eugene? No. We met him over in Ottawa. He got, his family came and took him back, and he had been with us for about a year and a half. Do you remember him?
That I think was Ray. Ray's.
Huh?
Ray. I think Ray's dad came and got
No,
him back.
it wasn't Ray. It was Eugene or something like that.
What started you bringing foster kids in?
I don't know. I really don't know. I liked having family around, and you guys, I thought it was good for you to have someone to share with and what have you, especially you younger boys. You had always grown up around brothers, and then suddenly your brothers were gone, and I wanted you to have someone to be the big brother to, be an influence on, and teach you how to be friends with kids. I think that's what started it. Out of the three that we had, that one middle boy, I can't think his name now. Eugene?
Yeah, I don't remember his
It
name.
doesn't sound right. I met him some years later in Ottawa or Utica, someplace like that. And he remembered us. But Jimmy was the biggest challenge. And of course, Ray was that misplaced teenager. He'd been kicked out of I don't know how many foster homes. We took him, and I think we straightened him out pretty good.
Yeah, I think we were good for him. I remember.
He had to learn to share. He had to learn to follow the rules. And he knew found out he couldn't get away with everything like he was used to doing. And
Well, Dad bought a little Shetland for all his boys to ride, and none of us could ride him but Ray. So Ray
oh,
enjoyed
I'd
riding
forgotten
horse.
that. You're right.
He could ride
He
it
felt so proud of that. And that Shetland would turn around and bite your foot.
Yep. Or
Yeah.
your leg, or whatever you could get to. He
Yeah.
was a mean old horse.
That horse didn't last very long. He got rid of him again.
So, do you remember any time that was like particularly difficult, where friends like helped you through?
For what?
That where friends helped you through to get through some particularly difficult times?
Probably my best memories would be Gene and Bob. Seemed like when things got rough, they had been there or they understood, and they were there to back us up or hold us up or help out with the finances a little bit. Not too often finances, but they'd say, come on over for supper tonight. Well, nobody ever invited us because of the family size. And they were one of the few that invited us for dinners and what have you. And
So 1968, around there, we packed up and moved to Racine. What was that like for you?
that was quite an eye-opener.
Good and bad?
I liked Racine. I thought Racine was a nice town. It was a different lifestyle, though, to live in town and have to watch your yards and stuff like that. From country living was quite a change. And Dad had a job that he really enjoyed. He really liked working for Goodwill. And do you remember the story about the baby they found in the Goodwill drop box?
No.
Somebody called Dad up one night and said, I hear sounds like a baby crying in that drop box, but we can't see in it. So Dad went down there, and somebody had dropped a baby and left it in the drop box there. You know, they used to have those great big ones, and you just, like a mail slot, you drop your stuff in. And the baby was crying, and I can't even remember who the baby was now.
I have no idea. I do remember Christmases. Those couple of years were great. I think Dad cherry picked things from Goodwill for our Christmas presents for all us boys. And I had my first guitar. I think I got a microscope. Just things from Goodwill that were just great.
Yeah,
Those were great.
he salvaged a lot of stuff from Goodwill. And it was just junk to most people. Well, where do you think I got my piano from?
I don't know.
Salvation Army. Got it for $50. And I thought it was worth every penny of it just to have a piano that worked. And it didn't take up half a room to put it in.
You mean like the organ that we had in
Oh,
Racine?
yeah,
We had
wasn't
an
that
organ
something?
took the whole living room. That was something. Back into ancient history, what prompted you to have us boys sing? Was there like a model for us singing, or where did that come about? That was fun.
Look at it this way. When you've got a bunch of kids, who invites you to their house or invites you anywhere? Nobody ever asked us anywhere. We weren't invited for dinners anywhere or to go to programs or anything.
I remember the time Gordon wanted to come over to my house for dinner, and you wouldn't let him. He said, no, they got to invite you. You can't invite yourself over.
I'm sorry, I can't
I
hear.
did get to go to your house one time for
Yeah.
dinner, though. Yes, I do remember that.
But it was so seldom that, and to keep you guys out of trouble, you had to do something. And I was playing the piano one day, and somebody came along and singing, and Greg had natural harmony. He would automatically hear the harmony and start singing the words with harmony. And so I thought, wow, we got a built-in gold mine here. So I would take you one at a time and teach you your part.
Mhm.
And I would pick out songs that were suitable for kids to sing. And George was usually the main tune. And the rest of you could be tenor or bass. When Greg had his tonsils out, and his voice changed and he talked so low always, perfect bass. So I taught him bass, and I'd take him into the piano one at a time. And the others weren't even around to hear it, and I would teach their part, play it until it became a song to them, and then they could sing it no matter who was singing with them.
Mhm.
And it worked out great. It really was terrific. And you guys had a lot of opportunities to sing out. I turned a lot of them down, but
We sang a song in church. Today they remind me of your dad.
Okay.
There's power in the blood.
Oh yeah.
You know, he used to say there was power.
Yeah.
Flowing power in there.
That's funny. Yeah, they're still going on today.
and it's a good way to teach kids too. They can learn their parts, so it becomes a song. Alto becomes its own song, and the bass or tenor, whatever you're teaching, you play it over and over and over, and they sing it over and over and over, and then no matter who's singing something else, they can sing that part. And it worked out terrific. People were always impressed when you guys would go out to entertain. They expected just a bunch of kids to get up there and sing the same tune. And you could see their eyes light up when they'd see the different parts come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was
the
worth
trumpets
it.
came out.
Plus, it gave you guys something to do.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I remember it was fun.
Well,
Except
we got
dressing up as a girl for the I Got a Pain in My Sawdust song, but the rest of it was fun.
that was a good song. It's been out of print for so long. I don't even know where it's at now, but
I probably could still sing it though. So.
I probably still have it in the piano, in the piano bench. But it was a way to get you guys out in the public and show off your talent, and taught you to learn to share excitement and be around people. Because nobody ever invited big families anywhere.
There was that point when Dad decided it's time to go to Texas. How did that go for you? Kind of walk me through how that seemed to be very sudden. How did that happen?
Well, he was working for Streeter Unlimited, I think, wasn't he? Or Goodwill.
He had come back. He was selling.
We didn't work very long for Streeter Unlimited, did he? Till you give that up.
He was selling insurance when he came back. I thought.
Oh.
Yeah, he was doing.
And he came back to Hardgrove, or he left.
No, it was
from
before
Hard-
that. It was before that. He was doing not State Farm.
Country company.
Country companies. He was doing country companies. and I think he got laid off from that.
Yeah.
That might have what started things. But what do you remember of that whole process?
Well, he had to earn a living. We had to have something to live on. And he knew insurance. He knew how to sell it. I don't know. I don't remember. You probably remember better than I do.
I was married. I was married at the time.
Where was you working at when you bought that house out on Oak Hills? You moved in for a while.
Was it Interlake?
Chicago or something?
No, I was working in Interlake in Pontiac.
Mm-hmm.
Steel place.
Well, who worked at Armor All?
Not me.
Arlene, my sister.
Tell me about when you got saved.
When I what?
When you got saved. Tell me about that.
Well, that's when they used to really preach the gospel and pin you down to it. I don't particularly remember my salvation so much, but I remember they were testifying in church one Sunday, and that particular pastor encouraged people going to the altar, and they'd have healing services. And we had just come from the doctor's office a couple days before, and the doctors told us that Jerry had that growth on the back of his leg, a tumor, and it had to be operated on, and they said there was no guarantee he wouldn't be crippled. And we didn't want him to go through the surgery and be crippled for life, but yet we knew that we couldn't risk not having it. So we left it up to the Lord. George and I kind of whispered during the invitation, what do we do with this? And George said, leave it up to the Lord. So he took him up to the altar, and before we looked at his leg, pulled up his pant leg and looked at his leg, and that lump was there. It was pretty angry looking. It was about the size of a small tennis ball back there. And it was affecting his walking ability already. Mm-hmm. And so we both looked at pull up his pant leg and looked, and George said, let's take him up and be anointed. And so we took him up, they anointed him, and all those prayer warriors came around and they touched him and prayed, and we came back, sat down in the pew, and I pulled his pant leg up. It was gone. His leg was perfectly clear. It came back the next day, but it went away slowly then, and it was gone. But that was my standing spot from then on. I know the Lord can do something immediately, and it stays. So.
Didn't Billy, what's his name?
Huh?
Didn't Billy, what's his name, Kelly, get beaten out or something?
Oh, Bill Kelly was supposed to be blind or deaf. One or the other.
Blind, wasn't he?
I think it was blind.
Said that he
and he
glasses.
was anointed
He don't
too.
wear glasses yet? I've heard, I don't know.
And he got good reports from then on too, from the doctors. So the Lord did a definite job of pointing out to us, look, you can't do this alone. Let me help. Mm-hmm. And from then on, you couldn't make me doubt away that the Lord wasn't able to take care of things. And he took care of a lot of things later on as you guys were growing up.
I remember Bradley Robbins, his healing service. That was
Huh?
Brad Robbins.
They don't go wrong ahead of the day.
He had his spine was shaped like an S. He was going in for surgery the next day, and they anointed him. He had a healing service. He never had the surgery. His spine was straight as arrow.
Well, Jerry never had that surgery on his leg either. Never had to have it. So the Lord can heal definitely. And there's other times too that the Lord touched. Just here at home, when you'd pray for somebody that had a need.
Mhm.
So I have a lot of confidence in prayer and what the Lord can do.
So, kind of in wrapping up, if you have a message for your grandkids and your great grandkids and your great great grandkids, what would you tell them?
You can't handle it alone. It takes more than what you've got or what your neighbor has or anything else. You need to hire helper and let him do the job and let him show them everybody that he's in control. That would be my word of advice. And I trust him totally. That would be my word. And I don't know how you'd put it in words, but
That's well put.
there were times when you'd be so sick that I wasn't sure but what you weren't going to die. The Lord took care of it.
I had times with Aaron. We thought Aaron wasn't going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
His airway he'd stopped breathing almost.
Well, your tonsils used to get so bad that you couldn't even breathe hardly. I was afraid they were going to have to do an esophageal surgery on you.
I don't remember that, but I do remember the ice cream. All the ice cream you could eat.
But the Lord took care of it, so I have a lot of confidence in what he can do. And as I get older, I know I can do less and less, and he has to do more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Jack?
Mm.
Well, thank you, Mom. Thanks for all of posterity for giving us this history.
Were you recording that all the time?
You got
Oh, help
you've been
us.
captured.
Help us.
The woman down historical, her daughter-in-law, his father used to tune the piano. Disappeared.
Oh.
Mertz or Miles.
Okay.
Miles.
Call
Yeah.
from Stuart I.O.
Who?
Call
Hello? No. Right. Now you're going to mail that to John? You'll mail. Yeah, if you. Will you donate $20?
No.
Yes, he will.
What?
My first name? You want his? It's John. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thank you. Hello there.
She'll never learn.
Yes. I think I'd rather just write a check, have him write a check and send it. Is that okay? No, I just forget it. Just forget it. We've already donated to most of our charities right now, so just forget it for now. But thank you for thinking of us. Good luck.
Yay!
She didn't want to check.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted a credit card or.
They want your banking
They want the
information.
banking. So you
You
did
got
that.
a call I
So-
had
Did I do
Right.
good?
Yes.
probably a couple of years ago.
Huh?
No, she got a call I got a couple of years ago, probably. Some
Could
police
be.
thing wants you to donate to police.
People prey on good-hearted people to get their money and
So
Oh,
information.
we
She
had a
said, okay,
racket
so
that really bit a
I
hole
got the
in
thing
us.
and I mail a check.
Okay.
Well, 6 months later, he gets another one, and they wanted money, but that's all it was. Okay, so this, a couple of weeks ago, I get another one in the mail, and it said, due to the phone call, is you okay? And you know it was $15 now.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even talked to anybody in the last 3
Yeah.
months
That's
anyway,
a
so
scam.
it's just a scam.
It's all scams. It's all scams.
I get a lot of calls that he doesn't know anything about.
All
I
scams.
wouldn't do any of them over the phone.
No.
If they mail you something from Salvation Army or somebody that
Yeah.
might be more legit.
Yeah.
But the all the independent ones, I get
No.
those scams.
Never give your information.
I give to the
anybody
I
Church.
give
on
to the
phone.
church.
Yeah, we
Give the
give
church.
to
Let
the
the church figure out who to
But,
give
uh,
to.
church
and
keep
that's-
back.
Oh no,
Background
I get a lot of calls. I never even tell him about them, but I
Well,
don't give out the
get rid of about
information, and we
15
don't
of them
donate.
A day when I come home from work.
Yeah.
15 calls on there. All over the country, every state you can think of.
Yeah.
So did I done good?
Well, you did okay, but you kept them on the line longer than I would. So
Well,
I'm kind of a,
no,
You're
thank
very
you.
polite.
they learn a lesson from it.
Maybe.
They learn they can't trust me.
And then you started documenting all the grandkids' heights in the bathroom, how tall everybody is.
Did you do it again?
You and me started that. I haven't. I'm gonna do it before I leave today.
Oh, well, you need a permanent marker. Have you got one handy, Jack?
Not that I know.
I got a pen, but we'll do it later. But I just was admiring that for a minute in the bathroom. I was like, wow.
Oh, yeah, you don't
So
wash
many
that
names
off.
on there.
That stays.
Yeah, so many names on there too. Like it started with just one, and you were like, "Oh, good idea."
Who was the youngest one?
Dana's or Tara's
I
kids
can't remember
are
her.
in there.
Okay.
There's some youngins. I don't think this.
Hey, down off and let your lights.
I don't think this is gonna last too much longer. But this is like kind of important light. Can you figure out how to plug this in?
Yeah, you need a permanent marker, and I don't have one
Just
handy.
let it go for now. Well, it's got 2 dots.
Oh, Jack will know where there's one. He's got a bunch of them in his desk,
A marker?
and I don't touch
oh, no
his
worries.
stuff.
I got pens. You okay? We're good. I was talking about this thing needs a power supply. This light.
Oh,
So, all right. So I'm going back into.
Did you start it?
We're starting. We're recording now. We're on the air. We're on the air. Take 2.
their names, their last name.
Did you take it in the other room when you were?
What are you looking for, hon?
My blue phone I had.
I didn't take it.
Teleported. Oh, I put it in there.
All right.
All right, give me 1 second.
Nobody gets to complain.
Nobody's going to listen. No, but do you have one of his books?
I had 3. I had the one that he signed, and then I bought 2 on the internet, and gave one to. I put it in a picture collage for Grant, Josh's younger one,
Oh,
because he was born on Grandpa's birthday. They shared the same birthday,
oh, how nice.
so it had the book, an arrowhead, some I don't know what else is in there, but things related
I think
to
his
Grandpa.
book is up there in the bookcase somewhere.
Oh, here, Jack brought
Right
it down.
there.
Oh,
Brought
does
down
it
here.
have the leather sample in it? Or the buckskin sample in it?
Mine
I
does.
love that clock.
Mine has the buckskin sample.
Call from Waterman, I.O.
I don't know if he's playing a waterman.
Call from Waterman, I.O.
All right. Quiet on the set.
That was a wedding present.
Whose wedding present?
You know who Iron Eyes Cody is, don't you? The Crying Indian used to be years ago.
Yes.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the head thing on TV a while back, telling about him. And he was actually Japanese. He wasn't.
Oh, really?
Indian. Yeah, he was. Liked the culture and started playing the part of an Indian.
You really can't find your phone, man.
I found it. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're gonna.
I got it.
Okay, so put this like maybe way over there so it's not part of these microphones. Ah. Oh, where's my cheat sheet? I haven't even brought a cheat sheet, bro.
Are you going to give me a quiz program?
Yes.
I generally flunk those, you know. I'll just make up anything.
Well, the first ones are easy, and then it gets harder as it goes.
Oh, well, I can make up hard things too. Did you ever notice that plaque on the back of on the wall behind you? My boys.
Mm-hmm. You need like 6 pictures here.
Yeah, I don't have that many though.
We are recording. We're recording. We're recording. All right. Quiet on the set. Where are you going? Oh, quiet on the. All right.